Hi, I'm Dr. Vonda Wright, and this is Hot for Your Health. Join us for conversations on the bleeding edge of science, health, and culture as we bring you tech innovators, thought leaders, and the movers and shakers who are transforming science fiction into your new health reality. Welcome back, everybody, to Hot for Your Health, where I talk to innovative people, scientists, physicians, and movers and shakers. And today, I'm going to introduce you to Marc Middleton. Now, I have known Marc for a couple decades now, which is amazing to me. But I first met him in his role as founder and CEO of Growing Boulder, which is the leading voice in active lifestyles. Not only is he an innovative founder, but he has had an Emmy Award-winning career as a broadcaster. And to put his money where his mouth is, in 2006, I believe, you left broadcasting to develop this broadcasting technology to tell the stories of how we can be healthy, vital, active, joyful, and really change the conversation about what it means to be growing bolder as we age. So, Marc, I'm so excited to have you here on Hot for Your Health.
Well, thank you, Vonda. Yeah, I love thinking back about it because we actually met when I sought you out. Yes, I was a sports anchor and a news anchor in Orlando. I got frustrated with the ageism in broadcasting, with the fact that we didn't want to produce any content that attracted older adults. We didn't want to produce any content after a while that celebrated the opportunity of aging. And before I left, I kind of started paying attention to everybody that was proposing a different and an alternative narrative to how we age. And I read about stuff that you were doing. And I was hired by the Lake Nona Impact Forum one year to record interviews with all of their top keynote speakers. And I just happened to look at the list, and there was Dr. Vonda Wright. So I sought you out because I wanted to chat with you, and we sat down and had a great conversation, and we've been friends ever since. So yeah, thank you. You know, Growing Boulder is, I always say we're not idiots. We don't deny the reality of our mortality. We don't, we don't present some Pollyannish view of aging, but we do choose to look at aging through a prism of opportunity and possibility instead of loss and limitation. And when you do that, and when you learn the power of mindset, when you learn the power that we all have to control the way we age, it gets pretty darn exciting.
It really does. And I'm sure you have a lot to say about the way even aging is spoken about. You know, in some camps, we talk about it as longevity at all costs. At some camps like yours, you talk about opportunity and growing bolder, and it doesn't actually matter chronologically. And in some camps, they're firmly stuck in the anti-aging. How do you put that all together? What is there a vocabulary that really describes the process as you've seen it, as you experience it? I certainly know how I've experienced it. I'm closer to 60 than any other number. And listen, I see it as an opportunity myself. So what are your thoughts surrounding all this language? Because we cannot change a narrative if we don't have words for it, right?
It's a great question. And to me, it's really pretty simple. And I've always really tried. I always say that I want to be able to defend the ground that I stand upon. From the beginning, we've thought very carefully about, how we talk about aging, pro-aging, anti-aging. And I know I'm speaking to the choir, Vonda, when I talk to you, because you are one of the very few people who can translate the science and the technology and the common sense, better than anybody. But, older adults, it's the most diverse group, the most diverse demographic cohort that has ever existed. And there is no one solution for everybody. There is extreme illness, extreme disability, extreme morbidity, and extreme opportunity. And, the way I talk about it is simply the fact that there are no guarantees. You're an idiot if you're looking for a guarantee. But we do know science has backed it up, and the stories that we tell prove that we do have a large degree of control over how we age by the lifestyle choices that we make. And as you know, and as I love to say, I think the number one most important lifestyle choice that we make is our mindset about how we age. And if we make the right kind of lifestyle choices, we can dramatically age in a way that is different than our ageist culture has led us to believe. So we just tell a different story. And it's a story that we defend and back up with by sharing the stories of ordinary people. We avoid the genetic super freaks. There are people out there. And but there's we've interviewed more active centenarians than any media group in the world. And I say, prove me wrong if you can. And there's none of them that don't have a litany of issues that they face each and every day, but they still enjoy their life. And that's, to me, is where the game is played. You can't pretend that you're not going to have challenges and they're not going to have struggles, but how can you figure out a way to extract joy out of your daily life, no matter your current condition, your current age, your current opportunities, abilities, or disabilities? And that's pretty exciting to try to figure that out.
Well, in your magazine, the print version of Growing Boulder, and on your website and even your channels, you tell all these stories. And having been involved in the National Senior Games as you have, I am always blown away by the capacity of human beings when they have an opportunity attitude. Is there someone that you love to talk about? Is there a story even from the last year? Because I know you must have thousands of people in your mind data bank about who's really exhibits this optimism and joy that you just talked about.
It's like shooting fish in a barrel. When I went to the National Senior Games and I said, listen, I believe that you are a grossly undervalued media property. I think very few people understand what's going on. But I have to be honest with you. I don't really much care about who gets first, second, or third. I'm not interested in reporting, the podium or results. Occasionally I will if the story that I'm telling happens to be someone that's a great athlete. But really what I want to do is I just want to tell stories of people who have started engaging actively in life in their 70s and 80s, people that have overcome serious health setbacks to be healthier than they ever were, people that are benefiting from the social connection of feeling part of a community. So there really is no shortage of them. And, some of them, I think, Vonda, many people wouldn't have heard about, but I'm going to go in the other direction because Julia Hawkins passed away just a couple of months ago. Julia passed away at the age of 108. And I met Julia at the National Senior Games in 2019 when she was 102 or 103 and set the world record for the 100-meter dash and the 60-meter dash for women 100 to 105. Nope, that age group hadn't even been opened up. And I just fell in love with her because she was so interesting. She never started running until she was 100 because she became fascinated with the idea of running the 100 meters at 100 years of age. Well, that said, she was a competitive cyclist for years, so she had a background. But I heard when she was 105 that she was going to become the first human being in history to run a 100-meter dash in a sanctioned track and field event. So I grabbed my camera and I flew to Hammond, Louisiana for the Louisiana State Senior Games. I went to her house, first of all, in Baton Rouge and hung out with her at her house where she lived alone, walked around her backyard with her. And, I have to tell you, the least interesting thing about Julia Hawkins was the fact that she ran. She was so in love with life. She wrote longhand letters to friends all over the world. She took care of bonsai trees, some of which were older than she was. She just loved what she said, the magic moments of life. And, and that's really one of the personal takeaways that I've gotten from doing stories on happy 100-year-olds is that they've all found a way to live in the moment. They've all found a way to extract that moment of joy. They all found a way to be collectors of life's magical moments, as Julia said. And running was nothing more than a magical moment for Julia. She loved the attention, and she was just uplifting to everyone that was around her. And maybe the coolest thing about that whole deal is here's this 105-year-old woman who used to be an elementary school teacher decades ago. And she's running 100 meters at 105. And in the stands were 15 or 20 of her former third grade students, now in their 90s, are all of whom came to cheer on their teacher as she became the first and oldest human being to run 100 meters. So, that's the kind of thing that leads you to believe that more is possible. And so, what was it about Julia? What is it about these active centenarians? And, the cool thing about centenarians is that it's as diverse a group as you will find anywhere. There are more women than men. That's gradually changing, but black, white, rich, poor, urban, rural, you name it. They're all sorts, as diverse as any human beings can be, which is encouraging to all of us, but there are similarities. There are common threads that they all have. And having a passion, having a purpose are two of the big ones. And Julia had both.
Gosh, I love that story. And I sure wish that I could have walked around her backyard with her and heard her stories and noticed the things that she noticed, right? Because when you've observed life for that many years and she retired from teaching, obviously, and stopped running around like so many of us do so often, I just think that must be fascinating to talk to people like her.
You know what? I also learned something from her because, I often say you can't live in the past, and a lot of older adults do. But I learned something from her. Her husband passed away, I don't know, 10 years ago. They were married. He was at Pearl Harbor when it was bombed. And they got married on the phone because he was there for 6 months and he couldn't get home. And she one day, like 8 or 10 years ago, after he died, pulled out the old box of love letters that he had written to her daily while he was in Pearl Harbor. And she said, just reading those, made me feel like a young girl again, made me remember the passion and the excitement and the intrigue and everything else. And I thought, you know what? So maybe living in the past a little bit, revisiting the past is probably not a bad thing for all of us to do, to remember what it feels like to be excited and engaged.
Oh, that's a wonderful story. As I was thinking about talking with you today, you really have your finger on the pulse of all the things we've talked about, what it means to age actively, what it means to really be well throughout our whole lifespan. And I wonder, as you look ahead at trends and technologies, and you've been doing this work for a little while, can you predict for me what you think the changes will be? Just like, when you started, there was probably a very different attitude than there is now surrounding aging. And if I ask you to pivot and view the future, what do you think is coming?
Well, I definitely think there is a changing attitude. And in fact, you and I were talking previously about a big conference that I was at recently about senior living. And, for the first time, the narrative has changed there. That entire industry is well aware that older adults have rapidly changing expectations. They no longer want to come to a senior living environment and sit on the couch. They want to be inspired to lean into life. So I think the narrative is changing very, very slowly. I think as human beings, and especially older human beings, and I know this sounds ageist, and I don't mean it to be, because I'm an ageism
But
warrior.
not your business, right?
Yeah, but I think a lot of humans in general are looking for the easy way out. And there's so much conversation about longevity now. There's the billionaire boys club that are investing in, the immortalist, if you will, who are trying to turn back the biological clock in the hopes that they can live long enough, so that this bridge to immortality might exist. And they're doing all sorts of genetic therapies and, the infusions of blood plasma from young donors and on and on and on. And I think a lot of people want to believe that at some point there will be some sort of technologies, pharmacological solution that's going to give them life. And I land on the spot, Vonda, that there never will be a pill for human vitality. There never will be a pill for human purpose. There never will be a pill for human connection. And so I do think that more and more people like you, people like me, people like those that we surround ourselves with and talk to, will gradually change the way people age by our example. Because, I always say, who's your primary care provider? You are. Who's responsible? Who's responsible for your health? You are. Nobody can make you do the things that you need to do, and that's the beauty of it all. And you know this better than anybody. I mean, you're a very kind interviewer. You've given me credit for talking to senior athletes when you were doing it well before me. But it's. We all have the power. We all hold the power right now. We don't need money. We don't need a gym membership. We don't need genetic interventions. We don't need novel therapies. We don't need nano robots injected into our bodies. We just need the desire and the attitude to want to live life, to want to be happy, to want to be healthy, and to make the kind of lifestyle choices that will enable that. Again, no guarantees. If you're looking for a guarantee, go somewhere else. So a long answer to your question, I think there's a lot of people out there, social media. I mean, you see it all the time. My goodness, when I first started this, it was hard to find anybody that was saying what you and I say. There's not a lot of people that are saying what you and I say that have the platforms that you and I have, but there is no shortage of people on social media that are trying to tell you how to age happily and healthily. So people want to do it, and more people are starting to do it. But, I'm of the school that there's no help coming. I mean, who is that says, they're not going to come? There's some big social media person that no help is.
No one's coming to like on a steed, right? It's all about you.
Exactly.
I actually love that you just hinted to something that I'm just going to say it because it's my podcast and I can say it. Listen, you and I have been in the trenches of active aging, changing the narrative, presenting good work since you switched careers in 2006, since I started writing my first book and talking about it. And I'm going to tell you for sure that when I wrote Fitness After 40 in 2008, I couldn't even get the 40-year-olds to like the number 40. But now, thank God. And sometimes I think, Mark, maybe I just wasn't a good enough communicator because nobody was listening. But now the whole world has caught the glimpse of what you describe as opportunity and joy, and what I describe as healthy, vital, active, joyful. Yeah. And on one hand, I'm like, if you would have listened 20 years ago, it would have been better for you. And on the other hand, I'm like, thank God people are finally listening. So it's my little rant. We've been at this a while, right?
And will they listen? Vonda, what was it? Just recently, a couple of days ago, a couple of weeks ago, depending upon a couple of months ago, whenever you are hearing this, a brand new study came out about the risk of developing dementia. This just came out. It is twice as high as previously considered. As many as 42% of all people as they age are going to end up with Alzheimer's or some form of dementia. And we hear that and we're aghast. But do we continue to read the study, which goes down to the bottom line that you and I talk about all the time and nobody wants to hear about it? However, if you start early enough and if you modify your lifestyle, if you get a lot of sleep, you eat well, you exercise regularly, you can dramatically reduce the risk. And so I've started to talk more and more about, actual testing, which I know as a physician, probably something you have talked about a lot. We've been doing something with a medical research company recently, and I was stunned to learn that 97% of people with mild cognitive impairment don't know it. And of course, mild cognitive impairment doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get dementia or Alzheimer's, but it could. But with these two new drugs, at least, that have been approved for early Alzheimer's and many more in the pipeline, you can slow it, you can delay it, you can postpone it for so long if only we can get people to be willing to get tested for it. And, so in that regard, I'm really become a fan and an advocate of science and technology and the testing that's out there, the early, the early diagnosis of all the age-related diseases.
To live the life we envision, the earlier we start, the better. Although my work and the work of some of the original aging researchers, Maria Fiatorone, there is no age or skill level when your body will not respond. These masters athletes you and I are both involved with, some of them have been active their whole lives. Some of them start when they're 100, is the story you just told us, right?
Yeah, they do. And what I'm finding out is I think one of the dividing lines for many between, keeping on and not is recovery. I always say less is more. And, the goal as you get older, above all else, is to avoid injury, because when you do get injured, it takes you longer to recover. I tore something in my shoulder. First time I've gone to physical therapy in my life. And
You're a swimmer. That's no good.
I know exactly, but I've realized, as you get older, it's a little bit harder. It takes a lot longer, and that's one of the great lessons I've learned from these masters athletes that you and I are so fond of. Is that, many people that will have an injury in their 70s or 80s, and certainly in their 90s, that'll be it. But there's countless stories of those who have leaned into rehabilitation, who have figured out a way to keep on keeping on. And, that's one of I just was working on something. We've got a growing Boulder club now that we're doing at senior living. And there's a theme each month. And the theme this month that I'm working on is adaptation and accommodation, which is another key differentiator for those who age successfully, because it's a given. We can't fool ourselves. We're all going to encounter setbacks as we age. And so how do we adapt and accommodate to that setback, to that loss? Can we find a way to still extract the joy out of what that activity was, even if we can't do it in the way that we were doing it? And so you see that in the national senior games. You see guys that can't hurdle anymore, but they're still going to run the 100 meters. Or you see, there's always a way to continue to do what you love to do in a different kind of way. And I think that's encouraging, is to let people know that it's okay. You're going to have problems, but all you have to do is adapt and accommodate. You have to persist.
Yep. Well, so many times in many different venues, I've spoken about my father. You may remember Gene Wright is a lifelong endurance athlete. He ran marathons. He would be gone so long running when we lived in the country before we had satellites to follow him around. They're like, where the heck? Which road did he go down? So people have heard about this lifelong exercising, but I rarely tell the story about my mother, who I'm so proud of what she's done. And it goes to the point that at any age, we can really invest in ourselves. So Mark, my mom is 85. She's the same age as my dad. And she grew up in a generation of women that for whom sports were not common. And so her whole life she's been active. We've been in the garden, but I would never say that she actively exercised. So what happened to her was during COVID, her heart blew a gasket and she ended up in the ICU. And we got this conversation with the cardiologist saying her heart is incompatible with life, but somehow the strong will of this woman got herself out of the ICU, right? And so on this journey back to health, she's come a long way. But do you know, in this last year, Mark, and this is the point of the whole story, my 85-year-old mother who was on the doorstep of death and somehow, just decided she had more time. Um, I saw we live in Florida, right? Where you do, and there are pools. And so I would look out the window. She lives with us. They both live with us. And I would see this woman circling the pool. And she had figured out that she was going to do 12 laps every day. And then the next time I see her, she's got soup cans in her hands and she's doing bicep curls and she's doing all this stuff she makes up herself, right? And I thought, wow, how proud am I? And then so I decided, okay, I can't have my mother weightlifting soup cans. So we bought her some 2-pound weights. And she did this and she quickly outgrew it. And then I got her 3, 4, 5-pound. This woman is up to 5-pound weights, going around the pool multiple times a day. But last year for Christmas, I bought her one of these little seated bikes because I thought she sits a lot. And if she's going to sit, we're going to engage her butt, core, and hips. Hmm. My mother now does an hour a day on varying resistance on this seated bicycle. And the other day she pulls up her little sundress and she says, Vonda, look at my quadriceps. And so she's proud that we now have definition in these 85-year-old quadriceps. So, I mean, we may be used to athlete stories like my dad or masters athletes that have done it for a long time. But I'm just so inspired by the fact that this quiet, never an athlete, 85-year-old, almost dead in the ICU woman has now grown some biceps and grown some quadriceps. It's amazing what the body is capable of.
I love that. And that's, to your question, what kind of stories do we like to tell? That's what we like about the National Senior Games, because there are many like your mother who, kind of just prove that it's never too late. I mean, I think that's the message from your mom, right? It's never too late, not just to get started, but to bounce back. That is inspiring. And look at what she taught you. I mean, you're a dancer and everything else. And look at your daughter. I mean, you got 3 generations of amazing women in that family.
Oh, thank you. I mean, we are fortunate. And I just love to think, well, that brings up a good point, Mark, how generational health can be, both genetically, but most importantly, attitudinally, activity-wise, that there's this concept, you guys may have written about it, called the Grandparent Effect. Have you guys ever written about that?
No.
Yeah, it might make an interesting article. The Grandparent Effect is the profound effect that the health of grandparents can make on their grandchildren. And we think that stops genetically, but it's actually not necessarily. It is because if you have healthy grandparents, you probably then have trained a lifetime of healthy children. And then when grandparents start spending a lot of time with their grandchildren, if you have healthy, vibrant grandparents, you're going to do activities with your grandchildren and not tolerate the thumb exercise we get on whatever it's called, those consoles are called. So it's the profound generational health effects that grandparents have on everyone who comes after them. So
no, I love that, and it makes me think of something related. To me, when I first started reading about this, it was I was reading about epigenetics at some point. The notion that we may be genetically predisposed to certain things, but the way we live our life will determine whether those genes express themselves or not. I read something about the fact, and it kind of was tying into legacy. If you want to leave a legacy, that actually. Your genes are listening to your thoughts, and that you can, in fact, change that which is inherited by changing your thoughts. So if you want to give your grandkids a better genetic advantage, you have the ability through your thoughts to do that, which I don't know how true that is, but I love the notion.
I love the thought of that. Well, I wouldn't put it past ourselves because almost every activity, and you know what, maybe if it's not direct thought, but certainly the cortisol levels that our thoughts vary have a genetic outcome. So what's ahead for us at Growing Boulder?
It's a great question. I think as I mentioned previously, we're at that stage where we still got to keep putting coal into the furnace to keep us going. I do feel like, Vonda, we have reached a tipping point, not just in the general culture where more and more people understand that there is a change in what's possible. But I think that, some of the bigger media companies, some of the bigger advertisers are starting to get it, which is good news for us. So we're a small team, and I'm just trying to lean into where the opportunity exists. I know this isn't a business podcast, but what I'm trying to do is move into different areas and have more partners than I've had in the past. We've had too few partners in the past, and from a business standpoint, when you're making too much of your revenue from too few partners, you're in a dangerous position.
You're vulnerable. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, what I do know and what inspires me every day is that we are changing people's lives. We're inspiring people. We hear from people every day that say, "Oh my gosh," and I've just got to figure out how to build that community. And so Growing Boulder is going to continue to lean into the challenges of life and continue to build our media platform. We've got two podcasts now, a Fountain of Youth podcast that we do with the National Senior Games, and Growing Boulders on NPR One. We do publish, our magazine is now digital only. The cost of paper printing and postage went up 30% in a year, so we're all digital now. We've launched a streaming platform, watch.growingboulder.com. We have a TV show in all 11 markets in Florida called What's Next. And, so we're excited. We've got 1.2 million people that follow us on Facebook, with more engagement than most major networks. So we're doing a lot of stuff right. We're just going to keep on keeping on.
I love it. I love it. And I know this market very well. And I don't know of another group telling the story of what it's like to live optimistically, joyfully, like Growing Boulder does. So I think your name says it all. Marc, thank you for spending a half an hour with me today.
I've enjoyed.
And I was going to say, don't forget to call me about those projects that we talked about before we got on air.
I absolutely will. I'll send you an email this week. It's great to talk to you as always. And not just congratulations for all you're doing. And by the way, I don't know how you do all that you do. Running from surgery to podcast to speaking, but thank you for all you do, because you're one of the very few that we pay close attention to and learn from and are inspired by on a regular basis.
Oh, you're kind. Thanks, Marc. I will talk to you soon.
You bet. See ya.
I'm Dr. Vonda Wright. See you next week.